Good evening. Welcome to the March 26th, 2025 meeting of the Needham Finance Committee. I apologize for the bit of a delay. We planned to hold this meeting in hybrid fashion. The link was missing a digit. So for anybody that was intending to attend the meeting or wanted to view the meeting remotely, we are recording the meeting and we will be posting it as quickly as we possibly can. So with that, I would like to open the meeting of the Needham Finance Committee. Barry Coffin will be joining us remotely. Are there any citizens here to request to address the Finance Committee?
Thank you. And you are Sue Mulaney. I sent a note earlier today, so thank you so much for the time. I'm here with friends and colleagues from the Council on Aging. So I'm Dr. Susan Mulaney. I'm a gerontological nurse practitioner and a Council on Aging board member. And we wanted to be here tonight to highlight 3 of our requests and share with you why we brought them forward. The first request was a handicap accessible back entrance to the Center at the Heights. Apparently, when the building was built, it has a back entrance, but it's not handicap accessible. And today there are a number of parking spots right by that door. So handicap accessible at the Center at the Heights made complete sense. One of the bigger ones is the gym, and I'm just going to circulate a couple of pictures. The good news, the gym is very highly utilized, almost so much so that the bad news is it's really outgrown. The space is outgrown itself, and there are safety concerns. What's happening, as many of you likely know, falls are a major concern of older adults, and 25% of older adults report falling each year. And I suspect this number is low because it's self-reported information. Now, the CAF does an amazing job at maximizing function and reducing falls. They have aerobic classes, they have strength building classes that you can see, and they conduct balance assessments and then develop individualized exercise plans for the participants. Now, what's happening, as you can see in the pictures, it's very crowded. And when you have people in there trying to do stretching, they're right up next to a machine. I look at it and I just see tripping, and it, is nerve-wracking. So that's busy. They are now holding the arthritis class, which is attended from a number of people in the game room because it is, and the game room is so crowded. You can picture pool tables and then people sitting in chairs and they can't see the instructor at the front, and hopefully everybody's doing the right thing. So the ask is to switch the exercise room with the game room. And there are significant dollars regarding that change, but it is a matter of safety and keeping people independent for as long as possible and highly functioning and strong is very important. The last request has to do with the kitchen, and it may seem like something we can do down the line because there's a number of opportunities for food. However, in Needham, we do have food insecurity, which may be surprising to some of you. The 2023 survey of healthy aging in Needham, 16% of older adults reported some difficulty with accessing healthy food, and 6% reported fear of running out of food. I'll repeat, that was 2023. So May of 2025, I suspect those numbers will be a lot higher, and that's a problem. Right now, Springwell provides a number of meals, but they are experiencing cuts because of the state budget. So there is concern that those meals may disappear. And when we look at the federal level, the Older Americans Act has been underfunded for many years with a 20% decline in funding, even with the aging population. So the waiting list for Meals on Wheels, as an example, is growing exponentially. Now, the CAF is a viable option for these meals. It would require updates to the kitchen, and I'm not an expert on that. So these items in my mind are not necessarily nice to have, they're have to have. We need access, we need exercise, healthy aging, and we need healthy food. So I thank you for considering the current and future needs of Needham's older adults as you consider the overall needs of the town. Anything to add?
No, I just want to point out that 7 years ago, the board recommended most of these changes. The town, 5 years ago, allocated $75,000 for a study of the needs of the senior center. The study mirrored what the board suggested at that time, and we haven't had any action on this until the proposal this year. But I think we're way overdue in terms of getting this going.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would just like to reiterate what everyone else has said. And the point is, I use the fitness room at the senior center about 3 times a week. And I go in there, I try to pick a time when I know there's not gonna be many people in there, and it's still crowded. And you have to walk around people and around equipment and worry about tripping, as you said. Because there's just so many people using it, and people, you know, working out on the floor, working out on the benches and the equipment and everything else. And the other thing is about the kitchen. The problem we may have in the future, we almost had it, and it went away for now, is for the traveling meals program. The BID has been the provider of the meals for the traveling meals program. But that, they hinted that they didn't hint, they actually said they wouldn't be able to continue doing that. And then they changed their mind with a little pressure, I think. And they're now continuing that, but the day is gonna come, I think, when they won't be able to. And we need a place to prepare meals for the traveling meals program. We've surveyed all the local restaurants and all the providers of food. No one's interested in doing it. And so the only way to do it is gonna be to do it in-house. But the kitchen has to be upgraded to meet standards, food safety standards. Federal and state and local food safety standards to do that. And then I've sat in that room where that door is in the back, and I see people struggling with the door. And in the wintertime, when that door opens and all the tables are in that cafe area, the cold air just blasts in there and everybody runs to put their coat on. So I think these things are absolutely necessary.
I was around when we built the building. That was the mistake in the building. We thought everyone would come in the main entrance. They actually come in through the entrance by the parking lot. And that's why a handicap probably wasn't put there initially.
I just want to echo all that has been already said, better than I could say it. I would add that without the free labor from very generous volunteers who give they're so valuable, they contribute so much. The center would not, the good news, bad news, it would not be as popular. But I also participate in many of those exercise programs. And there, people do fall, in fact, fall. I've witnessed it, and many are unreported. But I just want to point that out, and also to shout out not only to the volunteers, but to the staff who do a tremendous job with very limited, underfunded finance.
So I think I'm hearing you saying that you guys are in the town meeting warrant, there's an article for an appropriation of $395,000 for design for the three
Yes.
projects that all of you so eloquently spoke to. I just wanna make sure I'm hearing you guys advocating for that.
Yeah.
That's what the
Yes.
purpose, that's what this is.
That's right.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
That's what I
Have to have.
thought, but I just wanted to confirm that, okay.
Have to have, not.
And
quite
likely
high.
the voting population is the highest.
Okay,
Okay,
All populations in town. And kind of feeling a little bit putting back.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, second on the agenda is approval of last week's minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
I move that we accept the minutes from our meeting of last week, March 19th. Okay.
Great, we're gonna take a roll call vote. Heather? Yes. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tina? Yes. Barry?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. Minutes are approved.
by the way, Lydia is still looking for the new link
Oh,
you emailed.
thank you.
Madam Chair, could I request we move an item in the agenda, and I'd like to see if we could move next to the Article 32, which is the Center at the Heights renovation design. That way,
Sure.
these good folks can hear our deliberation and get on to other things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we need a second? Do we need to take a vote on that?
No, I don't think so. I just was.
That's fine.
requesting, okay.
Yep.
Be done.
So why don't we move to Article 32, now that we have a numbered warrant in front of us? Appropriate for Center at the Heights renovation and design. Yeah.
I have a few slides
Oh,
to
great,
share,
okay.
which, 4 slides, which was the limit that Dave gave me per project.
Yeah, there was a slide allocation, but thank you. I looked at the agenda tonight.
Um,
Is that? Right?
there we go. You can display that, that'd be great. These first couple of slides articulate the items that were just discussed by the advocates for the modifications to the Center at the Heights. I'm Hank Haff, Director of Building Design and Construction for the town of Needham. I don't know if Tim McDonald.
He is on, I can add him, yeah.
That is. We could add him, that'd be great. In the first slide, it shows in the lower right-hand corner, a very schematic diagram of where that addition would be. That opens directly to the handicap parking spaces, which are in the back of the building. And so it is heavily utilized. It's actually easier to get to that entrance than to go walk all the way around the building from the back. The modifications to the kitchen are articulated here. I won't go over all of them, but it, in essence, modifies it from sort of a teaching residential kitchen, which was what the original design had, to more of a commercial kitchen. So it would be able to produce the Meals on Wheels program if needed, but also serve the current.
It could accommodate what BID is doing in terms of the volume now.
That is the intent. It also requires additional staff to accommodate that, if that portion of the scope increases. So in the future, if that were a transition, then the town would have to be looking at both
Adding that to the budget.
adding that to the budget. Both staff and added food. Then the next slide diagrammatically shows the swapping of the two rooms. Currently, the smaller room on the right-hand side is the exercise room. And the room on the left-hand side is the game room, and it's about 300 square feet larger than the existing space. And you can see that there would be some additional equipment that would go in, but largely the existing equipment would be moved from one space to the other. There would need to be modifications to the some of the architecture and also the mechanical system to increase the mechanical. And that, let's see. Well, I won't get into all the details of the additional equipment, but it's a swapping of those two rooms and some minor architectural upgrades to each of them. The next is the budget.
No.
There we go. And there was a feasibility study that was done 2 years ago. And in that, there were multiple phases that were included, but the three that are before you tonight include that conversion of the kitchen, the swapping of the two rooms, the fitness room and the game room, and also the vestibule addition. And our anticipated construction cost has been escalated from over the last 2 years to bring those up to date, although it says 2023. I believe that those actually are, oh yeah, the escalation is included to midpoint of construction to give us the total amounts there. And so soft costs, we're projecting in terms of design plus other soft costs moving, because we'd have to move equipment out and then back in. And then FF&E, and that's our total budget. So FY26, we're looking for design funding of $395,000, which is in the warrant. And the next slide is a brief outline of the schedule. Once the design funding is appropriated through town meeting, we would begin schematic design with BH+A. We did the utilization study, trying to get to construction documents, bid documents by February of 2026. So that bidding could occur next spring in 2026, and construction funding could then be appropriated at May annual town meeting. We're anticipating it may be a year of construction, but that may be we may be able to accelerate that. It will require shutting down those rooms during construction. And so there'll be a variety of coordination items that will have to occur during construction.
So you would shut down those rooms, not the entire facility? But
Yeah.
is that feasible?
I think
Seems like there's a yes and there's a no.
some of the equipment might be moved into the larger multi-purpose room, for instance.
And that won't be affected by the.
That
kitchen
won't be
renovation.
affected. Yeah, correct.
So we think we could juggle. It will certainly be challenging to maintain services, and some of them will be reduced while construction is in progress, but we believe we could juggle most things. Again, a more limited size fitness room in the multi-purpose space. Potentially the game room would have to be offline for a month or two, which I know the pool players will not be happy with me, but we believe we can juggle it.
And a lot of those logistics would come out during the design process. And we are carrying some money for moving if we have to move some of that equipment fully out of the building. But moving pool tables is not an easy task.
I had some questions about the fitness room swap game room. I spent some time looking at the utilization study, to read about kind of the needs, and I think it's great that you're trying to increase the fitness programming, et cetera. Is all of the fitness programming done in the fitness room currently, or are you using other rooms to do like yoga classes or other things like that, or is it all happening in the fitness room that you're talking about?
Not all of it happens in the fitness room. The fitness room itself is open with a certified trainer at all times, but there are yoga classes, Tai Chi classes, some exercise classes that occur upstairs in, I'm going to forget the name of it, but the one on the far left if you came up the stairs. I forget the room number, maybe 213. But yes, we do use some other spaces at Cath for exercise classes.
Okay. And is there a concern that with only the 300 square feet, you're gonna have a need that in a few years with increased usage, we're gonna be back here saying, it's great, we got so, we added these extra machines, now we need more space. So are we sort of just band-aiding the issue? And I know you looked at the basement, and I guess I'm concerned that maybe it's not enough incremental, that like space for you guys to get what you need.
I think it's a legitimate question. We did look at a couple different options, including potentially moving the fitness area into the basement. We also looked at combining some rooms upstairs to make a larger space, which would kind of be in the shape of an L. There are certainly cost considerations. So I think, we tried to, when we were thinking about this, come up with relatively bite-sized chunks, knowing that, the town has substantial commitments to a lot of different projects and programs, and that, if we came in with a $15 million ask, that was unlikely to be looked kindly upon. But if there is an ask for $1 million or $2 million, that might be possible. So I'm certainly open to thinking about it. It's just we put together what we thought was the best combination of a relatively modest request that seemed reasonable for a chance of funding and something that would improve the programmatic operation right now.
Tim, can I just follow up on that? So I saw in the presentation, it said right now the estimated construction, I think, was at 1.7 million on the slide, and it said phase one. Is the intent that this 395 for the design is just to design for that phase one, or is there a bigger design that would encompass, and there might be a phase two and beyond in subsequent years, like you said?
There were some other projects in this utilization study, including a number of options to sort of reimagine the deck, which is a very sunny and also very windy place that doesn't get a ton of utilization. The Council on Aging Board, and I know you have a number of them in the room, kind of stated in no uncertain terms that that was not their priority right now, that they thought there were options for, putting up an awning or putting up a parasol or something that didn't cost, what the architect envisioned as a, dividing the deck into 3 living spaces, including, one with an outdoor fireplace and one with a, they come up with lots of great ideas, and I think they sound ideal, but it was not what the Council on Aging Board thought was the best use of money. They thought we could get an awning and some new deck chairs and some raised beds and be pretty good at $20,000 or $30,000. And if any of the board members disagree with that characterization, please speak up.
Right, so my thinking, to pick up on what Ally said, and Joe, is that if there's more things that need to be done for the fitness area, I think you should do it now. I don't see coming back in 3 years to say we want to put in another few square feet for fitness. I wouldn't phase it. I can understand leaving the deck alone and because that's costly and another thing, but. If you're touching the fitness, you're touching the game room and you're touching the kitchen. Let's make sure we do them all right and comprehensively in one fell swoop instead of coming back in 3 years and saying we want to do something more in the kitchen. I think
Okay.
you're paying for 2 projects, you're paying for 2 mobilizations, you're paying for 2 designs, you're paying for all that sort of stuff. So I'm all in favor of this. I would just make sure you look at it and make sure that you're not being I'm not accusing you of being short-sighted, but just make sure you got everything for your fitness in there. So you feel good that you have your needs met, and that's what I feel about it. And maybe the design has it, but I just wouldn't want to be in this room 2 years from now and saying it was another thing we wanted to do for the fitness. So why didn't we do it this time?
For sure. Okay.
I think that's a good point. On the fitness. So we looked at the basement, but it's really dark and without windows, and I think. For the next 5 to 10 years, you'd be fine in the. Extra space.
I'm not saying think about it. I'm just-
Yeah, no,
it's
no.
my own- The benefit of what
I think that
thinking.
was a legitimate, very legitimate question.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think we also have to live within the constraints of the building. We still need the game room for the pool players, because they have tournaments in there and everything else. And the fitness room really needs to be on the first floor for access for people, because it's a straight walk in. And you just walk down the hall, you don't have to go upstairs, downstairs, take elevators or anything else. And a lot of the people come in there who've had knee surgery, hip surgery, etc. And they need that kind of access. And they're using that fitness room, for recovery purpose.
Couldn't the
So,
game room though be in the basement? Pool halls are kind of dark. Is that, you know, it could be like a people cave, not a man cave, or, you know.
Yeah, I think, if it were necessary to expand the fitness room in the future, there is a stairway that's blocking the joining of those 2 rooms, but activities could potentially occur in both spaces. And yes, the game room elements could move to the basement. There would need to be added lighting. It does have elevator access, but there's no bathroom down there. So there are constraints. And we did also look at building on the roof deck, and that would require a long span and some fairly major structural
Yeah.
changes to the building that would have to work all the way down into the basement. So, that option was tabled because of its potential cost.
And are there other spaces like upstairs you talked about that the game room could go, or are you concerned that the game room moving into the fitness room is gonna be also a constrained space?
It will be a little bit smaller. Right now, the game room fits 2 large pool tables with plenty of space to move around them, as well as a large sort of foldable ping pong table, and does have a fair amount of open space still. It looks like if we're creative, we can definitely get both pool tables in, but maybe not the ping pong. So that, at least right now with the 1,000 square foot, going from 1,300 to 1,000 for the game room will probably result in some changes to what's available there. I will tell you that ping pong is used, but not to the same degree that the pool tables are. We also looked at, there's quite a few people who come to Cath to play Mahjong and bridge, and casinos don't have any windows, and maybe they could be in the basement. We've thought about that.
Obviously, we're not gonna solve it all tonight, but I would just encourage you guys as you look at this project to make sure you
Yes.
You have your needs.
That we're not
Yeah.
doing the work, making sure it's gonna last for some
The,
time.
the pool constituency is a pretty strong group.
That's what
So, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend adoption of Article 32 to fund the design work for the improvements at the center at the Heights to be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Okay, let's take a roll call vote. I'll start with.
I ask one quick question, sorry. Is
Okay.
the 2.1 inclusive or exclusive of the design funds?
Inclusive.
Inclusive, okay.
Inclusive with an I.
I had one more question, sorry, back to the kitchen. I just wanted to ask about the difference of the ongoing maintenance and cost associated with the commercial kitchen versus what's there now. And then
Yep.
also, are there any existing uses that would no longer be able to take place with the upgraded commercial kitchen? I didn't know.
Sure. So we believe that the relatively modest number of culinary programs that we do could still occur in the production kitchen, especially off hours if the production kitchen wasn't the process of producing meals. The current kitchen is actually where we're in the position of having to replace some of the appliances because they are now 11 or 12 years old in some cases. So we're replacing commercial dishwashers, which I really would have loved if they could have held out for another year or two. But the space, in terms of maintenance, if it is actively used at a production kitchen, we would probably need, and I would certainly have to defer to Barry, but we would probably need some additional support with cleaning. Kath does have 2 great custodians, and they do a fantastic job. And there's the morning day shift and then the afternoon evening shift. So there is good coverage in the building. I don't know if, potentially we'd have to have it deep cleaned once a month or something in the kitchen to keep it going. And, if we did buy new appliances and fixtures, we'd try to get extended warranties or maintenance contracts.
Further questions or discussions? So we can proceed with our vote. Barry,
Yes, sorry.
that's okay. Lydia,
Yes.
Tina,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for coming in. Okay, going back to, cash capital items. I'm sorry. Page 40. Okay. Want to go down these kind of one by one? Questions on library technology? This is for replacement of laptops, tablets, scan station. Any questions on those? Trail resurfacing and improvements.
How does this one play into the CPA, the CPC? Is it the same?
I think that
Project?
it's different in the sense that this is actually the Bay Colony Rail Trail, and then I understand the CPC was signage.
They did talk about trail improvements while they were doing the signage. But this is just.
Yeah. So this is more for regular maintenance. CPC funds aren't allowed to be used for maintenance of rail trails. Yeah.
General government technology replacements. Did you want to take that one?
Sure, any questions? Anybody has? It's standard replacement. This is for the exterior cameras at the Heights and the activity rooms and for door access at other buildings. Been in the capital plan for a number of years. And over the years, the town has been replacing, upgrading our cameras or in adding additional cameras where it makes sense, particularly if there are safety concerns.
And, Hank, will this interrupt at all the renovations at the Cal? Because this, would you be undoing what's being installed?
We would work also with Hank to make sure that, like we do on all the projects, to make sure that. That would be my thing to do,
Okay.
the install, so.
Any questions on town copier replacements? Questions on town facility replacement furniture and office fixtures? Questions on that? Defibrillators. No questions on that. Personal protective equipment. Doesn't the fire department usually get grants for some of their personal protective equipment or no?
They do apply for grants. This is the replacement of the gear. Every firefighter has 2 sets of gear and the usable life of their two. There are 2 issues. There's the usable life of the gear, and that's what this is intended. They also carry in the operating budget purchasing of some new gear because the gear is fitted to the individual firefighters, so it's not as though one leaves and the
Then they
next
give
fire
it to
can
the
use
next
it.
person.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Building management system upgrades. Any questions on that? HVAC upgrades. This is for a high school HVAC system improvements. Questions there? Okay. DPW, specialty equipment.
Is there a description of what specialty equipment entails? I'm just looking at the chart, I didn't.
It's for this is for a Dynapack roller for streets. NIPD's stormwater quality improvements.
I had a question.
No.
I'm trying to understand how this fits in with the operating budgets of DPW and the enterprise budgets for storm and sewer, like what NIPD's work is done within those, what NIPD's work is done here, how is that decision made? And what's the interplay? And I guess basically asking why isn't it all in one place as opposed to being spread out the way it is?
Sure, so I can give you how we've broken out our processes. What you're being asked for in the cash capital are specifically capital improvements that are being made. So items that are over $25,000 that have a lifespan of over 7 years. The items that are in the and these are all measures that the town is making in order to reduce its phosphorus contamination levels related to our NIPD's and MS4 permits. The operating items that we have as it fits into the sewer budget as the drains section are operating items that we have to undertake in order to meet compliance. So things like cleaning out catch basins, but they're maintenance related items. They're not capital improvement related items. So that's the difference between the two.
Okay, so could you just give me an example of what would be an item that would be purchased for or with this 500,000?
Sure. So if we were doing a project, we've been doing best management practices, which are generally different methods to try to infiltrate water into the ground as opposed to channeling it through a drainage system. So we've done these catch basin designs in which there's an infiltration tank that's put in the ground as opposed to just connecting it to a drainage system, when sometimes there's some vegetation involved with it as well. So you have the vegetation that's able to absorb some of the nutrient loads from the stormwater. That physical implementation, so you'd sort of see that on the side of a road or adjacent to a construction project, usually when we're doing other projects throughout town. That would be the type of project we would be doing under the capital versus the operating would be more maintenance related tasks. Maintaining BMPs would be an item that would be under the operating budget. But installing them would be an item under the capital.
And so just in general terms of just using the 500,000 number, how much of that goes to equipment or things that we buy as opposed to labor installation costs?
So this is all construction projects. So this is all, we're not purchasing equipment with the funding received for NIPD's under our cash capital. We are doing construction improvements along roadways in other areas in order to infiltrate more water. So it's all construction related activities or design related activities in order to implement that construction.
So I guess then now I'm confused because I thought, so how do, in other words, let's say someone is working on that and then the next day they're going to a maintenance item. How is the differentiation done in the budgets with respect to that person's pay with how it comes out of a capital article like this versus out of what they're doing as part of what our overall operating budget is?
Sure. So the work done under this is all outsourced work that's being done by contractors.
That was my question. Thank you. Did you have my own?
I covered a lot.
And one question I have, because it came up for when Gabby was here on the sustainability fund, I call it. So none of this is potentially be grant funded and supplant and replacing the 500,000. Is that?
So what I'll say is the $500,000 we are getting, because that's what is sustainable under the current fee structure that we have, falls below what the town's requirements are in order to meet phosphorus reduction loads. The project that we're doing that Gabby articulated does have some phosphorus reduction benefits to it, but that's not the primary purpose of the project. So the primary goal of the MS4 permit and the NIPD's program is to simply reduce pounds of phosphorus in our waterways. The stormwater project on Alder Brook has some benefit for that, but the main portion of that is actually stormwater capacity, not stormwater quality. So it wouldn't be a good use. It wouldn't be an effective use of the resources to achieve the goal of reducing our phosphorus load.
Okay, thank you.
She does have other grants though on here about flood mitigation, stormwater reduction, like would any of those be eligible
So-
with this funding?
So incidentally, they might have a benefit for phosphorus, but the specific program that we have for our NIPD's actually identifies watershed areas within the town that we need to reduce nutrient loading. And that's not the goal of the project she's doing has to do with climate resiliency related to stormwater capacity. So there's stormwater quality, which is the type of water that we're discharging into river streams, into the environment. And then there's capacity, which is when we have high intensity rain volume events. And where does that water go? And does that water go into infrastructure and people's properties and that sort of thing? So they are related, but not necessarily the same end goal. And projects, oftentimes they have some mutual benefit, but usually you're doing like the value of doing infiltration. It's not the most effective way to collect water in the fastest way possible. It's the best way to infiltrate it into the ground. So that way it cleans the water. When you're opening up a brook or culvert, that's a better way to absorb water, but it doesn't provide that filtration. So they have some mutual benefit, but it's not like a one-for-one benefit. So the projects that we have been focusing on from the climate action plan are not on, because the climate action plan is dealing with the resiliency component of climate change. They're not dealing with like the nutrient loading and that regulatory requirement. They're really just dealing with the resiliency side of it. So there's a minimal benefit, but it's not the maximized benefit that we're looking for out of this program.
Okay. And this is ongoing, so should we expect this level year after
For a
year?
very, very long time. The amount of phosphorus that the town has to remove is significant. And the funding levels that we're receiving, which are helpful in moving us forward towards that goal, it's going to take a long time for us to meet those objectives.
Thank you. Any questions on sustainable building retrofit program?
Yeah, just curious, Karis, long time, we talking 30 years? Are we talking, do you have a sense of total dollars? Is there a significant benefit if there were resources to accelerate it?
I assume on the NIPES program,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think we've estimated between 30 and $50 million as far as meeting our MS4 requirements, and that was probably in 2016 dollars. So 30 plus years, we're hoping again to increase the funding at some point for this project. There's at some point, again, there's like a dollar value in which you can't do enough work in a year. So we'd have to figure out what that is, but this is well below that threshold.
Is this offset at all with the fees that we're starting to collect?
Not this year. We don't have enough in fees to appropriate.
What
Right.
do we anticipate they would be on an annual basis?
Between 400,000 and 500,000 a year. But we just
Okay.
began billing, for this, last April.
Thanks.
No problem. Any question on school copiers, school furniture? School technology?
Have a question.
Yeah.
Is the amount being requested here specifically for use by the schools and the school department? Or is the fact that they're also the data center for the town impacting the?
This is specific to the school department and academics. We continue to break out so it's clear what is a town-wide or town supported expenditures versus that are educational related.
What is it, what, can you enumerate what that 577,000 is mostly for?
Sorry, are you talking about the school side or?
Yeah,
Yes.
the school side.
Well. So, the school technology, unchanged from last year, the $577,000 includes everything from, it's $113,000 breakout in network infrastructure for servers, switches, wireless access points, the general network. And then the 464,000 is everything from desktop computers to security cameras, AV classrooms, everything else technology that's not in the operating budget. And the operating budget, just as a reminder, is small, portable devices like iPads, Chromebooks.
Got it. So this is over a certain dollar.
Correct. And longevity.
Okay.
Yep.
And the operating budget was where the reduction was.
Yeah, that's
in
what I was,
devices,
that's
right?
why I was asking.
Okay. Transportation Safety Committee improvements. Questions there? General fund core fleet replacement. Can you talk?
Yes, it's the fleet replacement program, which is consistent of the core fleet and specialized equipment. This was an area that was scaled back from that which was requested and planned for funding for fiscal 2026.
Can you remind me what the scale back was on it?
The request was for 19 vehicles for the general fund, of which that would have had a cost of $3.3 million. Recognition of some of the constraints that we're going to have for funding and capital needs. This was an area that we had scaled back down to 5 vehicles. And just to remind the committee, the 5 vehicles that are requested for funding FY26 is 1 police vehicle, has to do with the maintenance division. Most police vehicles have a life of less than 5 years, and that's why they're in the operating budget. This particular piece of equipment is on the maintenance vehicle maintenance division, and has a life that will be 10 years, and hence why it's in the capital plan. It includes 1 fire response vehicle for, for, deputies and, a fire ambulance. The town has, 4 ambulances. 2 are the front line that are the ones that go out, for any call. And the second 2 are backup ambulances. And what, the practice is when we're replacing the ambulance, and basically we're almost down to 1 every year. There will be a gap from time to time, a 2-year gap before replacement. But we look at the 4 ambulances that we have, and we dispose of the ambulance that is in the poorest condition. So what usually would happen is the new ambulance would become one of the 2 frontline ambulances, and one of the frontline ambulances would become the reserve ambulance, and usually one reserve ambulance is what we trade. In this for the new one.
Okay.
The, there's only 1 piece of DPW equipment. This was the top priority. It's a Volvo front end loader that's used regularly for construction work by the highway division. It's also used in the snow removal program of the town. And then the last one was the item that was pushed off from FY 25 to FY 26, and as a bus replacement. And it would be seeking to replace a current fuel based bus with a electric school bus.
And the delta between a fuel-based and an electric school bus is what?
About a couple $100,000.
And what's the life of the school bus?
It's at least 7 years. It's for gathering information. And so we typically keep our buses 7 to 8 years and before we cycle them to another use.
And is this is this the first electric bus or the?
This is our pilot.
Okay.
So we wanted to, we have a project with DPW right now to install the charging infrastructure at Williams School. And we've been working with the sustainability coordinator and Kansas Department for that. And this would then be the first bus. But this could be charging infrastructure that's used for, it's gonna be level 3 charging for heavy duty vehicles.
I had 2 questions. One is, do these get auctioned off and do we get some revenue back on these vehicles or no?
We typically trade them in under the state contract that we utilize to purchase them. So we do receive a trading value that reduces the purchase cost by our next bill.
Okay. And then my other question was, I just see here the fire department vehicle. It says the year is 2021. Was that the expected lifespan of that vehicle? Or did it age?
Yep,
prematurely?
it's same concept with those fire vehicles as well as with the ambulances. What happens is the new vehicle would replace the 2021 vehicle. The 2021 vehicle would be bumped down for another use, and then the oldest vehicle would be disposed of.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other additional questions on cash capital items?
I would make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of Article 27. To appropriate for general fund cash capital the items delineated in the warrant. Total amount of $4,558,050. To be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Okay. Can we, ready to take a vote? Alan?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Lydia?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes, thanks.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Next up is appropriate for library renovation. And do you have more thoughts?
I do. So we can skip them if you just want to ask questions.
Nope, that's okay.
Okay, you want to lead on?
Yep. So, back in August of 2023, the library, staff and, the trustees approved a, library space utilization framework study, which identified 4 phases of, renovations to the Needham Free Public Library. After a lot of work, talking to stakeholders, including, patrons, staff, trustees, friends, the community at large through focus groups and surveys. The 4 phases identified by this study are shown here on the first slide. Phase 1 is a renovation and expansion of the teen room, which is currently about 800 square feet. You may know it as the back space separated by a glass wall on the second floor. So we're looking to expand it by 5 times to just over 4,000 square feet and renovate this space. Last year at town meeting, $454,000 was approved for the design work for phase 1. So since the summer, we've been working hard with Hank and the architects and our staff to create a great design that we're present to you tonight to seek funding for construction for phase 1, which would start in early September of this year and be a 6-month project.
Jump to the next slide. So this gives you a sense, the quiet study area up on the upper left there, that is the current classed-in area. We'd be removing the built-in furniture that was originally constructed within that space. It was designed as a computer lab almost, and all of the kids coming to the library now have their own laptops, and technology has changed substantially. The craft area will have a linoleum type floor, so it can take a bit more abuse with various crafts occurring within that. It can also be used for studying. There'll be movable tables within the space. The lounge area is located in the center. And just at the upper right-hand corner of the lounge is the desk for a librarian. Librarian will have direct view to the 2 primary entrances that are marked by the red triangles. And then there's a group study area that's over by the windows on the left-hand side. And that has banquette seating and tables so that up to 4 students could be sitting together and doing group study. So part of the whole reason for enclosing this entire volume is to reduce the sound to the rest of the library. But and some of those walls, the wall that backs to the main stair will have glass from about 4 feet up. So there'll be visibility in, the doors will be glazed. And the natural light that exists in that space will be preserved. It shows a quick timeline. We're hoping to mobilize on site in September and achieve substantial completion by February of next year. Next
So
slide.
what do you envision going on in the craft area?
So the craft in the upper right hand is an image of what the craft room would look like. So this would be some of the teen programming that we do, craft programming. There's a display on the wall to the left. You can see that we use for gaming situations, but also if our book club has a teen author and wants to zoom in. So it's a multi-purpose space. It'd also be the place where if you like to eat, you'll be directed to this space because of the flooring, and as well as the furniture is very easy for building maintenance staff to maintain.
And the lower right is that lounge area. Again, that could be study or it could be gaming or a variety of uses. And then you can see on the lower left, some of the banquette seating and the natural light that comes in from the upper skylight. And some movable tables, but there would also be plug-in potential against the wall and underneath the banquette. And then the quiet study area is opened up substantially, but because it has a lot of solar heat gain, that whole lattice work of wood is being installed on the inside. We did look at the option of putting where you would like to put solar. Brise Soleil would be on the outside, but it was substantially more expensive and we weren't sure that the existing window wall could support that structure. So this, and all told, within all 4 spaces, there are over about 95 seats.
And that's versus what? It was,
Maybe half that. And it kind of, well, the number of seats in that, what is going to become the quiet room is maybe a dozen.
mhm.
And so the teens and tweens kind of spilled out everywhere. And there's a big rush at the end of high school day. And it's great that it's popular.
Mhm.
I think if you go to other cities and towns, you'll see similar developments in their public libraries for teen spaces.
So then can you go back to the other 3 stages? I mean, this is,
Mhm. So the second phase on the ground floor would be the renovation of the children's room, not an expansion, but a renovation of that space.
mhm,
The third floor, the third phase is the renovation of the circulation area as well as where the new books are, if you're familiar with that space, and the creation of a second meeting room. We have one room, the community room, which is well used. So there's a great need for a second meeting room in the library. On the 4th floor, we go back to the 2nd floor and we revisit the reference area. And so we rework the reference workspace, as well as relocating the reference desk to a more central location, where public computers are now, and just a general renovation of the area within that red line.
and you have estimates yet for those, you have estimates for those projects and timing?
Those are in the both in the long-term capital
Right.
plan. I don't have them with me.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in here. They're all generally around $2.5 million, plus or minus a couple $100,000 for each of the 4 phases.
Mhm.
The idea was that over the course of 8 fiscal years, we would be visiting you, design, construction, design, construction, design, construction, to get the 4 phases done over 8 years. That was the hope.
And the last slide shows our current budget. And we have noticed in the cost estimates, we've gone through from feasibility to through schematic design, design development, and then 80% CDs. There has been an escalation of over $100,000 that was incorporated into the budgeting associated with the anticipated annual town meeting request of 2.386. We do have a 15% contingency on the construction costs that we're carrying. We just have a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. We've been hearing on one side that work is falling off and some contractors are getting more competitive in their bidding. And we've heard on the other side, all of the unknowns associated with tariffs. And we're not quite sure where it's gonna come out. But this is our best guess. The bid documents are on the street. We'll be getting 12 sub bids next week and the GC bids on the 17th. So we'll have those in hand in advance of the town meeting, hopefully. And we will be putting into a couple of relief valves with deduct alternates within the design. So if the bids come in too high, we'll be able to either change a ceiling type or do some modifications on the banquette seating. And then the other relief valve is that there is potential funding from the Friends of the Needham Public Library and the Library Foundation of Needham for FF&E, if that is necessary. We would hope to be able to purchase all of the FF&E with utilization of our contingency, but we also have to respect the timing, the lead time necessary to get it on site.
So Hank, are you carrying the sorry for me to, where are you carrying the FF&E?
Third line down.
I get, okay.
Associated with note 1. And that along with the equipment. Some of the. So those two line items. Also. We're seeing some uptick in steel pricing for library shelving, for instance, and likewise metal associated with furniture. But those are uncertainties until we can actually do the purchase. And most of the furniture is going to be coming off the state bid list. So as long as those numbers are accurate, they can't escalate them within their bid period.
So the FF&E to possibly be paid by the Friends and Library Foundation, is that based on what? Based on cost escalations and other parts of the project?
Yes.
Okay.
We would hope not to tap into that, but it's possible we will. And maybe we'll get a great bid. Those are always welcome.
So how long is each phase construction period?
This phase we're anticipating to be about 6 to 8. So we start in September, October, November, December, January, February. So 6 months. And the future phases, we really would need to get into more detailed design, but I would think we could crank those out in about the same time frame. Some end up being a bit more disruptive.
I was gonna say, what are you gonna do with the teens for 6 months? My kids go there every day.
Yeah, so we're working on
They're not coming
plans.
home.
Yeah,
Staying with
we've got plans, so we have plans during construction to for the teen collection, for teen space for study and programming. So we're working through all that to make sure that teens still feel that we can deliver for them during this construction period, as well as other patrons. There's going to be a lot of area within the library that's off limits. So we're working on an inventory of current tables and chairs on the second floor and making sure we can redistribute them and relocate them throughout the library. So we're not losing significant seating for our patrons for 6 months. There will be some inconvenience for staff and patrons related to noise and just working and visiting next to a construction zone. So we've been working hard with Hank and with the GC when they're hired to make sure we're thinking of everything to mitigate any concerns for staff and patrons.
You seal off the section that you're working on, like, are there safety concerns in terms of?
There will be temporary construction walls, so that the corridor that goes adjacent to the stairwell will be, that portion of it will be closed down during construction. They'll have negative air pressure machines in the space in order to maintain the air quality, and we're requiring regular air quality testing within the space. The majority of it, I think, is once the demolition is done, then most of the dust will be eliminated, we hope.
Do you anticipate all the work is gonna happen typically during opening business hours, or are you trying to do it off hours?
Contractors start at 7 AM, the library opens at 9. And they typically end their day by 3.
Yeah.
And since it's interior work, they may be able to start earlier than that.
Yeah.
They'll be utilizing the upper lot across the street over at Rosemary Pool.
Yeah.
For their trailer and other things, but we'll be insisting that they bring all their supplies in early in the morning, in those couple of hours before the library actually opens. And I don't think you ever have a huge rush at 9 AM.
We have a
Except
manageable rush.
management rush.
Yeah, but it does work out, the construction's timeline, the 7 to 3 PM works great, because it's about 2:44 when we see the rush, the mad rush, through the front door. So at evenings and weekends, there'll be no work going on.
Okay. Any other questions?
And-
Mary?
Sorry, I have a question. So this is just phase 1, and then for the other 3 phases, you'll come back next year for approval for funds?
Yep, so those are in the SIP for FY 27, 28, 29, and 30. So we'll continue to advocate to move forward with phases 2, 3, and 4 over the next 6 fiscal years.
Just to follow up, there's no dependencies, so we're not like breaking something that's gonna have to be fixed, or we're not making something worse with this project that we feel like we have to do the next project now because of that. They all sort of are separate projects in another sense.
Right, yes. The only dominoes falling from this is collection work that we're doing, which is actually improvement. Moving collections temporarily, but also relocating to the ground floor, and then making some improvements to bring the large print collection forward for those patrons, and collections that are less used, put them against the wall on the ground floor. So it's precipitated some good improvements that are outside of these construction projects.
Any other questions or discussion?
I would make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of Article 29 appropriate for the library renovation. $2,386,000, that amount to be borrowed.
All right, let's take a vote. Lydia?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, just, on all your slides that you're gonna go do tonight, can you get them to Molly so we can have them?
Yeah, she
He has
I
them
have them
now,
now.
Okay.
but she just.
It'll be helpful when we have to make our town meeting presentations to be able to have that information in the background.
and I'll be glad to supply you with any additional graphics.
Well, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Okay, appropriate for Needham High School stair bill. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Questions on the stair repair or is there anybody that?
Thanks, Barry.
Barry's on if you need any.
Hank, are you, is the PVPC doing this?
BBC has, passed it on to building maintenance department. And,
Is that gonna be corrected in the warrant?
It would still be under the jurisdiction of the PVPC. They just can vote to authorize building maintenance division to do the work.
Okay,
But the article is consistent with what the bylaws say. The project's over $500,000. Charged to the PVPC.
mhm.
I think you might want,
This
can you
is-
put that in the description of the article, just in case there are questions?
Have they voted it yet?
Yeah, they voted on
yes,
it.
they
right?
did.
It's like already this close to the printer, but that's really.
No, I mean, I'm just. That, it doesn't need to be special for that. If it was being, if there was still another draft that you were all doing, I would suggest you put it in there, but. It should not be the only thing that the draft should be held up on.
Understood, thank you.
So just. Do we have, are there any questions for Barry on the stairs? And I think everybody's seen the caution tape. That has been a permanent fixture on the stairs for quite a long time.
So when do we know when the work's gonna get done?
It'll be this summer. We're gonna be asking for an emergency preamble. Because we need to mobilize and start this construction as soon as school is over. It does impact the emergency egress for that particular building, so we can't have that section occupied while we're doing construction, which means we need to have it done before school reopens.
Excellent.
And that's feasible.
Yes, we believe that's feasible, yeah.
Can I, was this just normal wear and tear over the, 20+ years, or was there's some sort of defect from the original project?
My understanding is wear and tear from over 80 years.
Yeah, it was never.
It was
it
not
wasn't-
addressed in the original project in
Oh,
2009.
Oh, these are the original stairs, sorry. Even before John went. No, John, you didn't go, John, I forgot, you didn't go to Needham High.
I've been up and down those stairs a lot, though. I would make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of Article 30 to appropriate for the Needham High School stair repairs in the amount of $1,040,000.
Second? Great. Lydia,
Yes,
Barry,
Yes, and one quick question, do we go through a design phase with this, or this is just, we don't need to do that for this project?
We've already done the design. I believe that was
Okay.
a facilities maintenance warrant article, because this came up as sort of an urgent issue.
Got it, yes, my vote is
Okay.
yes.
thank you. Tina?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Moving on to appropriate for Newman School theatrical lighting, sound and rigging repairs.
Don't have a slideshow.
I'm disappointed.
We're waiting for the theater to be there. So I can speak to it, however. if you-
Great.
And Madam Chair, there is a change to the funding source. It is, your draft warrant says it's it's gonna be from free cash.
The updated one.
This updated one says free cash,
Okay.
so that's okay. All right, but thank you for pointing that out.
So generally speaking, since the Newman Theater was renovated in 2011, all of those systems, sound and lighting systems within that theater were analog systems. We're converting with this to digital systems for both sound and lighting, and also all LED lighting. That LED lighting actually reduces the electrical load, so there shouldn't be a lot of, there wouldn't be any necessary upgrades to the electrical. But it'll make, and right now, the existing system has failed, and so you're renting, the school department is renting temporary facilities for every performance in every major event.
Sound and lighting.
Sound and lighting. And
Is this just a function of quick obsolescence in this type of equipment? Because I hear this a lot. Just. Other,
yeah, I mean, your light bulbs go out after 10 years or more. And replacing them with old light bulbs, which, you know, incandescent lights, which are more and more difficult to find. But yes, there is ongoing costs associated with, particularly with, you know, the microphones and other things are relatively fragile.
The wireless now operates on different frequencies, CC
Right.
frequencies. The speaker orientations, for instance, in the theater, doesn't reach everyone who's seated in the theater, so there are deader spots in some areas of the seating, for instance.
The other thing that we'll be doing is upgrading the balance of the curtains to inherently flame retardant, rather than having to treat them annually. So that's a safety issue.
There've already been a significant number of repairs to the rigging equipment, and that was in the earlier phases.
Yes, so safety and compliance. So there were multiple steps in both in this theater, in the high school theater, and in Pollard. Safety and compliance
Right.
came first. We're still working on the second phase of safety and compliance. Pollard is pretty much done. High school will be done hopefully in April, and the balance of the Newman work will be done over at over the summer.
Okay.
And then the design of all of this is nearing completion. We would be going out to bid on it shortly, where it'll be an electric contractor as a prime, but they'll have to have theatrical riggers as part of their team in order to build it out and put everything in place. There'll also be some safety harnesses that are put into the catwalks that are, so when students go up there, they'll be able to clip on to that system. So there are some additional safety upgrades that will occur with this. And there'll be a whole new control panel for sound and lighting at the back of the theater.
Is this the final phase of upgrades? I know you're talking about the incremental or safety, and then is this the last piece of?
For Newman.
For Newman.
For Newman.
Okay.
And Newman is the major theater currently in town. The other two theaters are significantly smaller. In terms of the phasing, the intent was to do Pollard next, but now that Pollard has been accepted into the MBTA process, that thinking of what's going to happen to the Pollard Theater will be wrapped into that study.
so this may continue to be the major theater in town. This is what,
Depending on what comes out of Pollard, there are members, there are folks in town, strong advocates for doing a more major theater at Pollard as part of the Pollard. Both middle school and high school do have theatrical programs. The Pollard Theater is used almost all day long with, both English classes and, debating club, whatever else they do. And music, it's regularly used for music.
That isn't something, generally speaking, the MSBA would participate in funding.
Right.
Reimburse.
Yeah, so
Is there a plan that we're gonna continue maintenance on this and sort of keep it so that we don't see articles, this large in the future? Or is it sort of, we need to upgrade it every 10 years and that's what we're looking at?
well, the life expectancy of the LED lights, I think, is in the 10-year time frame. It depends obviously on the number of hours of operation. But they are, they're lighter and easier to change out. I would think that there would soon become a standard replacement budget.
I think the standard for this kind of equipment is a lot more like technology now than it is fixtures that are permanently affixed to a building. It's essentially all technology. So as technology, transforms and evolves, so does this equipment. So this is like technology equipment that may need some upgrading, into the future, just like any other kind of technology equipment.
This will become part of my CIP, the technology, the lighting, not, but the technology, the control of the lighting.
Got it.
Now,
So we're gonna
so it will
roll
not be
into
this
a plan.
thing left out to dry, it'll be part of that.
That was
Yeah.
part of the question.
There'll be money needed to fund that, but
Yes.
there'll be money for it.
We also are changing or have a plan to change the way we operate when this lighting comes on board, and that is to have an individual who manages it, manages the groups who use it, manages the bookings, manages kind of all those things, and that would be connected to the Fine and Performing Arts Department. So I think that's, and also the training that needs to happen for student groups and other groups who use the equipment, including town groups who use this equipment. They'll need some support.
So that leads to my question of outside groups, not Needham schools, but outside groups who do a community production or something like that, who will have the benefit of this. Are we looking at any specific upcharge or fee or user fee or something along those lines, because they now have the benefit of this new equipment, updated technology and things along those lines? What's the thinking along those lines?
Yes, that's currently happening for the most part when we permit the auditoriums. That is part of the fee that's collected. I think we have to we will more closely budget, and then looking at Karis or whatever she is. We're more closely budget for the replacement of the lamps and the things that need replacement to be part of that fee that gets charged. So there's a little bit of a budget increase we have to do for that.
Yeah, I would think it's a more attractive space, right? Because it's more modernized and with respect to the technology they have available to them, I would hope we would think about, having some of our investment shared by groups who are, not the schools, but outside groups who are using the facility.
I think it's likely that we'll have somebody supervise either from our staff or this person who would be managing the equipment. A lot of this work is after hours, so you have to kind of balance people's real lives with this use, but we'll have some supervision and folks use the equipment as well. And that would
We're
be
also
true.
purposely building it with not completely separate, but two separate systems, sort of the day-to-day use system that the school will use. And then the theatrical system. So before, the problem was they were one.
Yeah.
So the theatrical system was getting used all day long for, the gym class on the stage or whatever it may be, right? Full lighting, something like that, right? So there'll be two systems that run on that. The speakers will be shared. But there will be two systems that run, and the people using it during the day will not have access. Well, actually, everything's locked out, right? They won't have access to do any of that. They'll just set up for a simple system for your basic 4 mic setup or whatever will all be a simple system, and then the actual will be on demand.
Do we anticipate the demand for outside groups to increase with these upgrades? Has that been?
But
sort of
the other piece is
whole
there was a
plan?
discussion about what an outside group what outside groups will be able to use it. We also built it so that an outside group designed it. A lot of work from the committee here, so an outside group, we can actually say, that's great, you can come in and use the space. But you have to bring your own equipment, and we have a plug-in port that they can still rent their own equipment. So that the really technical soundboards and all that, they can actually rent that, plug it in, and they're not using ours. They won't be doing the damage to that, they won't be using our wireless microphones that break. They can still say, okay, you can rent the space, but you can have the speakers and the lighting, but you know, get the stuff that breaks a lot. You gotta rent that yourself and take that. But that's, we still have to work that all out, but it was designed if we wanna do it that.
So DPW does the rentals of the schools after hours, so the largest single user that we have of this particular auditorium is the Needham Community Theater. We don't rent to any for-profits as a policy, so it's really only nonprofit productions that would be using it. And like I said, the Needham Community Theater is probably the single largest user, particularly of the Newman School. So that would be the user group. We haven't seen like when the Newman was renovated. Right, so 14 years ago, we didn't see an uptick in interest in it. I mean, we have interest in it, but it's usually from for-profit organizations that we don't rent to. So.
Right, okay.
Lydia, Barry, any other questions online?
Nope, thank you.
Any questions here? Does anybody?
I would make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of article number 31 to appropriate for the Newman School theatrical lighting, sound and rigging repairs in the amount of $1,820,820 to be raised from free cash.
Second.
Great. Let's just take a roll call vote. Lydia?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ally? Yes. And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, appropriate for public works facilities improvements to the Jeff Cogswell building.
Musical chairs.
Yep.
And Lydia, hey, Molly, we do have
We have
Three.
one here.
4 slides. So in 2023, there was a feasibility study for the replacement of the DPW facilities. There was a prior one, as you may recall, in 2016 that looked at relocating the facility but keeping it all together. Then COVID came along and your story.
Well, we learned that we could operate out of multiple facilities, which should have been sort of self-evident because we function every single day across the entire community. That's the job and the work that we do. So we decided that we no longer had to co-locate every single function. We had 50% of our staff actually located out of the Cogswell building during the vast majority of the COVID pandemic in order to do social distancing. So we had half the staff out of 470 and half the staff out of Cogswell, and we found that we didn't have a lot of concern from the neighbors as far as the utilization of the facility from a mustering perspective. And obviously there were some benefits because Central Ave was less busy during the pandemic. But it allowed us to look at, instead of doing one large building and having to phase it in one large project, we could do it in multiple stages and multiple projects at potentially multiple locations. Because the site at 470 is very constrained, and the results of that 2016 study were a substandard size facility for the operations that we have in DPW.
And that existing building at 470 was constructed in 1950. It's well past its usable lifespan. And a year and a half ago, we experienced 4 inches of flooding throughout that entire building. Had to rip out some walls to stop the mold. And of course, the large trucks didn't get hurt, but some equipment did.
Can I actually just say more critically, that entire building was surrounded by 2 to 3 feet of water. So effectively rendering that entire facility as a island, which we didn't bring equipment through for the hour and a half that it took for the flooding to subside. So not only was the building itself damaged, but our access to the emergency center for the DPW was also limited.
So phase one of this is to add that fleet maintenance building to the existing Jack Cogswell building. That would enable the fleet component of DPW to move over to this location. That consists of about 6 people. They come early in the morning, they leave mid-afternoon. Negligible, if any, impact at all on traffic on Central Avenue. If we go to the next slide. This is more detail of the proposed plan. It will have bathrooms and changing rooms and maintenance rooms in addition to 4 bays, one of which is a drive-through bay. So that second bay up from the bottom of the image. So that large trucks could come in from either side and drive through. I'm told that the largest number of accidents occur in backing conditions, when you're backing large vehicles out. The building will be connected to the sewer. There'll be a sewer pump station near the entry drive, and then there'll be a force main going up to its connection, which is near High Rock Street. And then there'll be bioretention basin put in the back. There will have to be additional blasting done in order to remove rock that's on the site. And that retaining wall, that red retaining wall, is actually a fairly steep rock face. If you go out to the building today, you'll see where blasting was done in the prior installation. And there'll be fresh water and new electric, and because this facility has to be available also 24/7, there will be an emergency generator on the site. We're currently looking at whether that can go inside or whether it remains outside.
Do you have that now where the fleet maintenance is existing now?
We have an emergency generator. I think it's 1960s vintage. We had, subsequent to the flooding, we had in August of 23, in December of 23, we had, some pretty catastrophic, windstorm that came through, and it knocked power out of our building for 3 days, and there was some concern about the ability of that generator to maintain the building for 3 days and not potentially present a fire hazard, to be perfectly frank. So it's not a it's there and it exists, but it's not one that I feel comfortable relying on in the long term into the future.
And are you offering a walkthrough for any residents who'd like to come?
Absolutely. We'll coordinate with the town manager's office and put out a information session for people to walk the existing building. We did do a public information session for the existing Cogswell building, so people could see the current layout and then also what the new layout would look like, to provide people some context of what we would be developing there, should this project be approved.
On the next slide, please. So in terms of budget, we just got through this morning with our DD cost estimate. After reconciliation, we're at about 16.25 million for the construction itself. We're carrying just over a 10% contingency, and the FF&E and soft costs, which include a lot of heavy equipment that goes into the building, some of the lifts and other things, bring us up to that total of 19.6 million that's being requested for the appropriation. We have bid alternates, number 1, which would be putting solar PV on the roof of the new building. We're estimating that right now in the $300,000 range. And we also have bid alternate number 2, which would be converting the existing garage from natural gas to air source heat pumps. And part of the reason, well, the new addition is going to be a geothermal well. It'll be ground source heat pumps. And similar to the PSAP building that our offices are in today, except these wells will go down 1,600 feet as opposed to 500 feet. And they'll be much more productive per ton of heating and cooling compared to the ones that are at PSAP.
Can I just speak to why we chose to go with that method versus the air source heat pumps?
Yeah.
We have air source heat pumps at multiple buildings. We have them at the CAF, the RRC and Memorial Field. We have found them to be a little bit more challenging in terms of maintenance compared to the geothermal. So the geothermal we have at the PSAB has been there for almost a decade and a half, over a decade and a half. We've had very minimal maintenance to them, and no disruption to the heating or cooling of that building, which is not the case with the other 3 facilities I just mentioned, with much newer systems in place. So the reason we were going for the more expensive option is we truly believe it will be a lower maintenance, long-term cost benefit for using that technology.
It also helps us meet the new opt-in specialized energy code.
Well, wouldn't you meet that with heat pumps as well?
We would not get any potential rebates or Eversource incentives for the air source heat pumps, but we would get those from ground source. And if the IRA money is still available, there's a potential for some fairly significant grant funding in the future. Who knows what's going to happen there? Also with green communities decarbonization grants, we would, by converting to an all-electric building in the existing building, we would be eligible for about $250,000 in grant funding there. All of those grant funds come at the conclusion of the project. So you have to build the project, open it, and then those become available. Which
fund it.
Which is why we would be potentially looking at, we're carrying them as bid alternates. And we will see how the bids come in before relinquishing any of the contingency funding to do the solar or the air source heat pumps. And again, there are unknowns in the current bidding climate. This is an all steel building. Tariffs, we do have design and contingency funding within the cost estimate. But it's really an unknown as to whether we'll be hitting tariffs associated with that steel.
So what's the timing with respect to when are you going out to bid, Hank?
Next slide, please. So we're doing the permitting in March, April timeframe. We expect to have bids, the documents on the street by late August or early September. So we would have bids in hand by October, end of October. And starting construction in November. There would likely be a couple months of site work necessary before, and there'd be lead time associated with steel building. But by spring, they'd be pouring concrete for the foundations. And then once the steel comes in, the erection is pretty quick, assuming we get to substantial completion by January of 2027.
My recollection is that this is just phase 1. There's a number of other $20 million projects rapidly coming up. And from our questioning last time, none of those are contingent on success of any of the ones before that. They're all standalone. So
Yes.
That is a level of flexibility that if we need to look at, we always can.
Yes, and the reason we sequenced it this way with starting with the Cogswell is because it doesn't have any relocation costs, so we'll be able to move the staff over from their existing facility to this facility without any interim space requirements. And when they move over, it will substantially free up space for the currently compressed remaining public work staff, so it won't upgrade the condition of the facilities they're working in, but it will decompress them in their current location. For example, we have 16 people right now who work out of one garage bay in our Parks Department. It will open up the 3 bays that we're currently using for mechanical work, as well as some office space occupied by our fleet supervisor.
It's not beautiful space, but it's space.
It's space.
So what's the expected sort of the building of this? How is it gonna affect the number of vehicles and trucks with a combination of ones that are getting maintained there, ones that are getting stored there, people who are now working there? What's the sort of overall vehicular count that's gonna be increased entering that site with this building being built?
All of the standardized, well, first of all, as I understand it, the vehicles that need the greatest amount of maintenance are actually those that are at the RTS. So that means they're not commuting over to 470 Dedham Avenue when they need repairs.
Right, but that's, my question is, ones that aren't there now, that are gonna be turning into that new facility, how many of it?
So you'll have 6 employees that will be reporting there. And again, our flow in and out of our fleet building is not happening usually at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. It's usually happening throughout the day as we drop off equipment. Middle of the day, we have an issue, we have a report. So it's not like a linear, like people are showing up at 7 o'clock and leaving at 3, except for the staff that reports there normally. So I do believe that Weston Simpson has done a traffic analysis.
They're in the process.
And I think it'll show there'll be a very negligible impact as far as traffic goes in that particular area. We can certainly look at, and we talked about this last time, our work orders that we have on a daily basis and show you how many additional vehicles would be situated there as far as getting work done on a regular basis. So we can certainly provide some data regarding the number of work orders we take in a day, which would usually translate to the number of pieces of equipment we're maintaining daily. We don't anticipate that any vehicles will be stored there, with the exception of, I think, 2 vehicles that are assigned to the fleet department that they use to deploy for roadside assistance for our equipment.
And is there any zoning relief that's gonna be necessary to build that building?
But we do
What's
have to
it-
go,
it
we have to
looks-
go through planning.
Yeah.
We have to go through conservation. And the NOI was submitted yesterday. And planning, we're anticipating that submission by the end of next week.
I think Barry has his hand up.
Barry?
Yeah, just, can you give a rough breakdown of the 16 million in construction? How much is the actual building itself versus the site prep and other work that has to be done to be able to put the building there?
Grab my other folder. You don't have all these numbers memorized, sorry. What is it?
They're processing it.
Yeah. It's an old version. Generally, the steel building. Prefabricated steel building is in the $2 million range. The site work. Earthwork. Site work. Is it exterior improvements? Is another 2.5. Gosh. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, whoever's gonna have to present this, I think it would be very helpful to have that breakdown.
I can forward you the DD cost reconciliation sheet.
Okay,
And it breaks it down, the basic construction costs prior to all of the overhead profit insurance. You know. And escalation is around 13 million.
but the
And-
building itself is just two of that or less than,
Yeah, I mean, I think your point, Barry, is what you're saying. It's an expensive
Yep.
site.
Yeah.
The
Right.
retaining wall, blasting.
Yep.
I mean, we're paying a lot for the site
Yeah,
work as opposed to really the building itself.
Also the sewer work, because we would be running sewer down.
Right,
et
and
cetera.
so all those things are really what's escalating price to what it is.
Yeah.
and there isn't, yeah, you know, it's certainly questions, it's a valid question to think, oh, is this the optimal site for this particular building?
do you have another one?
Given all that,
We looked at numerous alternate sites and this seemed to be the preferred site.
I think it would be useful to forward over the information, because I do think the vast majority, I think it's more than $2 million for the building, because plumbing
Okay,
and
okay.
HVAC
Oh,
alone.
no, I was
exceeds
just
that.
saying the metal structure alone.
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
The overall.
no,
point
fair enough.
It's several, yes, yeah.
So, Karis, maybe this is a question for you. How does the solar panels here relate to what we saw from Gabby as far as the solar panel project for Cogswell? Is it one and the same, or is it what's considered for the grants to be putting solar on the other buildings?
I think it's for putting solar on the existing Cogswell. So initially we had planned on adding solar to this project, and there was some complications with the Department of Public Utilities because this was on the same parcel as the solar generating facility on the landfill. That I believe has now just been resolved. It was legislated, or it was signed into legislation to be resolved when Charlie Baker left, but the DPU has finally put out regulations regarding having multiple sites that a municipality owns that generate energy. That was the difficulty we were running into at that site. So we did not move forward with with the lease program for the Cogswell. And so adding solar on the new building and then ideally on the existing building as it is built solar ready, would certainly help us, reduce energy costs at this facility.
Yeah, and in terms of PPA, since this is all funded from borrowing, we would have to, the town would have to own the solar panels that go on the roof. But it's required by the energy code to make it so the structure solar ready. And adding to this type of roof is relatively easy.
So it will be solar ready.
Yes.
Absolutely, as part of the base, and then hopefully we'll be able to accept the add alternate number one, to put solar on the new building.
But we would apply for grants to do the solar separately after the project is complete?
So the whole thing about the sustainability fund that Gabby has been talking about is that, what we did on Sunita Williams, for instance, was the base building was constructed. We were far enough along in the project that PBBC felt that it was we were able to spend money to buy that solar that goes on that roof. That was a separate bid that went out. And but the construction was done concurrently with once the building was enclosed and the roof was all on and inspected and approved, then we were able to install those solar panels at Sunita Williams. The fallback scenario is that we would be able to bid it as a second item here. if necessary, but ideally it would be affordable within the base project budget. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, I'm just trying to understand how all the different things commingle.
Can you expand a little bit upon why this article is coming now at this town meeting? It's a substantial sum, obviously. And I know that there are other asks and other big projects that are gonna be coming up, and I'm sure at town meeting, there may be a debate is, do we spend this now or do we spend this a year from now?
So I mean, I think we have a critical asset in the community that is vital to delivering services that is failing. I think initially, and when we've looked at building projects in the past, I think we've well past the time in which we had envisioned that 470 would have been redeveloped at this point. I think there are other buildings in town that house staff that have been redeveloped, and we initially had asked for one large project, right? I think it was at the time, like $48 million single building. And I think I worked with the staff, I worked with the town manager and articulated that I didn't think it was realistic that we were gonna get $48 million. And we could wait forever for $48 million to happen and no improvements would be made and that structure would continue to fail, potentially to the point where it was uninhabitable. And so instead of doing one large project, we did the revision on the feasibility study to look about how we could do smaller projects and make it more tenable to fit within the levy and not have to go out for a debt exclusion for this particular project. So this is the first phase to make that happen. It still does not relieve the vast majority of staff from their existing facility. And I feel this is the first step that needs to happen in order to allow the existing facility to be addressed. So my concern about delaying it would be obviously that it would then delay all the other components of the project. And even though this project doesn't solve all the problems, it solves some of the problems that DPW has, one of which is we have a fleet bay that is inefficient for us to maintain our equipment. And this will allow us to more efficiently maintain our equipment, as well as decompressing a facility that is currently overpopulated. So each stage is considered discreetly, and I imagine by the time we get to phase 3 or 4, we may have different sites on board, we may have different locations, but the goal and that's why it was set up where each project can be done discreetly. But I think that delaying this component of the project does put the town at additional risk should that building fail. We do have some points of failure, both structurally and physically, based on the location, based on the fact that it has a propensity to flood.
I get that part. What I'm struggling with is, are we getting enough out of this building? And I ask that because, it's $19 million for a garage, and I'm not trying to be facetious or flip about it, but so we're paying a heck of a lot of money with some really cool things. The geothermal's cool, all kinds of stuff like that. And I wonder, can we get more people there, more offices there? Can we get more staff there? Can we get, and I know I'm arguing against myself in the traffic, but I just, that's what I'm struggling with is, are we really getting the most bang for our buck? Making an investment like that for 4 bays, and that's the part I think that's, for me, at least personally, I'm having the most struggle with is, are we really getting for all the investment in that site and things, are we getting the most bang for our buck as far as our staff and those types of things?
So I'll address it backwards, I guess. That location doesn't work for any other operation in DPW except for fleet. And the reason is when we talk about the traffic, whenever we've talked about traffic when it comes to DPW, it's not the number of vehicles we add to the road is going to be minimal, right? We've got 60 people. That's like 1 vehicle per minute. That's not a huge volume of traffic to add. The problem is that there is traffic on Central Ave that would potentially bottleneck DPW's operations. So when we get in the morning, 7 o'clock, we dispatch and we leave at 7:30. At that point, we've created a bottleneck for ourselves to be able to dispatch to the other locations in town to be operationally efficient. So the location doesn't work well for any of our divisions that have to go off-site in order to do their work, which is all the other divisions that are currently working at a 470. So that's why the fleet was chosen for the Cogswell location. Because it's not, they go to the Cogswell and they stay at the Cogswell. And again, the minimum, the vehicles coming in for service are usually not coming in beginning of day or end of day. What it does do, and one of the things we've made sure that the facility provides is additional amenities for the RTS staff, which are also in a building that is not, up to date nor provides many amenities. And so it will have, for example, they don't have a shower at the RTS. This is a group of individuals who work with waste as a profession. The showers facilities will be sufficient to assist them. They'll have a break space and they'll have locker space and bathrooms that are not connected to tight tanks like the rest of the facility. So while it doesn't provide services, you know, full time for that staff, it will provide them some amenities on that facility. And the reality is to rebuild for the rest of the staff at the 470 location, we have to remove an operation in order to make that site viable. And this was the division. When we went through all the iterations and we talked about moving Parks and Forestry to another location and a few other co-location ideas, because we're so site constrained, there aren't a lot of sites that we really had to choose from for our operation. We didn't have any other opportunities for other off-site operating divisions. And so the support division of Fleet was the one that got relocated up there. So I completely understand the desire to provide more operating capacity out of that existing facility, but the location is what is kind of the constraining factor. Shane?
The other thing I might add too is this does have some site constraints as well. So in order to try to maximize and get additional divisions out there, like a highway division or something, we're already gonna be at the max capacity for the site constraints due to the wetlands and other constraints out at the site. So we did look at, when we were doing the feasibility study, looking at other options, is what other divisions could we potentially put on this site? And the ultimate decision was the Fleet was the only division we could put here because of the constraints with the site would allow for a building and to get other workspace in, because otherwise it would be trying to jam staff and equipment into a space that's inadequate for our needs, just like we're in now.
Was there, do we look at putting an office layer on top, or is that not from a zoning feasible?
So right now, the demand for space, with the exception of there is office space in the very back that will support our fleet supervisor, our fleet, the assistant, and then in a parts warehouse that will be sort of in that back space that's more kind of your typical office space. But the demands, because we have PSAB, which is a lovely location, we don't have a huge demand for additional office space for the rest of the staff. The staff that's functioning out of 470 is really working foreman and below. So they're the ones who are going to report to facilities all day. They just don't have an appropriate facility there in the winter time in order for shop space, which you really can't do on a second floor, or for sort of mustering space for the beginning and the end of the day when we're in active construction season.
Got it. Thanks. What about pickleball courts?
Sorry.
Does anybody have any other questions? Or are you gonna send that information?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's see if I can do it. All right.
And do people feel prepared to vote, or do you want to wait until we get the more detailed cost breakdown?
Yeah, I'd like to have a further discussion on this.
Yeah.
At one of our next meetings.
So if you could send that, then we have room next week to do that, right?
Yes.
All right. There's no other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could you also send us like the feasibility study, or the back sort of the background knowledge document.
We can send you the links to all the items that are on the
Yeah.
site, yeah.
All right, next is appropriate for infiltration and inflow. That's Article 37.
Yeah, sure. So, this is the first time, I think the last study we did was in 2015. But effectively, our sewer system is made up of pipes. There's sort of two sources of water that get into the pipes that aren't from people, flushing their toilets or going down their drains. Those sources are, one, cracks in pipes that allow water to come in, and then two, from illegal connections that people have from sump pumps, that sort of thing, that go into the sewer system. The problem with II is that we then take this clean water that comes in either from the cracks that we have or from people discharging, and send that to Deer Island, and we pay a penalty from MWRA because of that. And so we are incentivized both from you know, a sense perspective and a financial perspective to reduce as much INI in our system as possible. The second issue we have with II is that when we have flooding events, like we did in August of 2023, it surcharges our sewer system, and it surcharges our well system, our pump, the wet wells in our sewer pumping stations. So when we had that event, our number one issue was pumping down those systems, because should they have overflowed, they would have backed up into people's properties. So if people thought water in their basements was bad, raw sewage would have been much worse. So the value to the community, in addition to just a financial incentive through our MWRA fees, is that it helps secure our own sewage system as well when we have high weather events. In order to do this work, we actually would camera our entire system, as well as institute some sewer monitoring systems throughout the system that we have. The cameraing is time consuming and requires, and that's where really the bulk of the cost is for this project. This will result in projects for follow-up sewer projects for doing lining and replacement to deal with any issues we have. And it will identify individuals who are connected, whether knowingly or not, to our sewer system, and try to help reestablish their connection to the drainage system instead of our sewage system. So that's what the two focuses will be. It will result in projects afterwards. The vast majority of our II work, we have been able to fund through large commercial construction projects in town. So most of those projects are required to contribute to a fund to reduce II. Effectively, you build a big building, people are flushing toilets or whatever that contributes to our sewage. They're supposed to offset that contribution to our system. And they do that by basically paying a fee to the town. And we basically offset that contribution by reducing that II, that then creates space for them to have their use of our sewage system. So it's anticipated that projects that would result from this, some of it would be funded through outside sources and not necessarily just town resources.
And the funding of this is, we're looking to utilize the MWRA grant loan program. And how that works is, the MWRA offers loans for terms of 5 to as long as 10 years, and it's a 0 interest loan. So obviously there's value paying no interest and paying it back over a period of years. And the grant part is, we borrow $1 million, but we don't pay back the full $1 million. It's a grant. Currently, it's about 45% of the amount that we borrow. And hence, that's why this is proposed as a borrowing authorization.
Okay. So you borrow $1 million. Or you borrow, where's the grant coming from?
But the grant, what happens is the MWRA basically forgives percentage of what it
Okay.
loaned you and gives you an amortization schedule for the portion that you have to repay.
So the only amounts then that will flow through our balance sheet, I guess, are the repayments, the annual repayments?
The grant loan, what happens is the MWRA forgives percentage of what it loaned you and gives you an amortization schedule for the portion that you have to repay.
So the only amounts then that will flow through our balance sheet, I guess, are the repayments, the annual repayments?
Correct, there'll be a debt authorization for $1 million. And let's say we do the project all in at one full swoop, we would borrow $1 million from the MWRA, $1 million of cash coming in. And then once the debt is permanently financed with them, it will be reflected at the portion that we have to repay. Let's say it's 55%. The financials would show an indebtedness of $550,000.
So that is what would go against the 3%, 550,000?
This is sewer, so that's not covered under.
Oh, got it.
Okay, any other questions on this article? You feel ready to vote on this? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that the recommended action of Article 37. Appropriate for infiltration and inflow program in the amount of $1 million. Due to the provisions as stated in the warrant article.
And Madam,
Second.
and just for informational purposes, you probably want to focus on the title because the articles are going to be renumbered again because one of the articles, quiet zone, which you won't need to take action on, is being withdrawn, so we have to renumber again.
Okay,
It only affects articles after Article 35.
right. All right, so Ally, is there a second? Great. Barry,
Sorry, yes.
Lydia,
Yes.
Tina? Yes. Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, great. Water sewer connections, what article is that?
Article 39, page 50.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Hiding at the bottom.
Which is just an article to remove old fund removal of old pipe, right?
Yeah, and this is primarily our lead removal program. So this has been targeted on lead for at least the last decade. We have new lead and copper regulations that were put out that require the town to remove even more product from water services. We believe that this should complete the work for lead removal within the town, this appropriation. And we think it will take 2 to 3 years in order to fully expend the funds. But the reason we ask for the larger sum is in order to make us eligible again for MWRA loans, should we choose to do that. But this is with cash, correct?
This is gonna be cash, yes.
So we're asking for 2 to 3 years worth of funding
For
at
this.
one appropriation, yeah.
Does anybody have any questions, discussion? Want to make a motion?
Make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of the soon to be renumbered Article 39. Appropriate for water service connections in the amount of $500,000. To be raised under the provisions of the warrant article.
Retained earnings.
Second.
Great. Let's take a vote. Barry,
Yes.
Lydia,
Yes.
Tina? Yes. Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ally,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
So one question I have is in the draft I have, it says the sum will be transferred from source. That will be
The final
updated.
version has the correct words, water retained earnings.
Okay.
Great. The next one is quiet zone. Do you wanna?
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. I'm on the quiet zone. But working group. Committee. For the quiet zone working group. So we had a meeting at 5 o'clock tonight, to report, or to hear about the recent developments. There was a a significant meeting last week. They call it diagnostic. Diagnostic review meeting with the MBTA and the DO, MBTA, Keolis, Federal Railroad Agency, FRA. Harrison's, some of her staff were there. They walked all the sites, with our, designer, engineer, Ty and Bond and their consultants. And I think the report was that good and productive discussion took place, but we're far from having a design, and we're far from knowing exactly what it's gonna cost, so. With that being the case, it didn't seem, prudent to go forward with the warrant article appropriating. Construction funds, we don't know what we're constructing yet. So the decision was made to continue with the good progress and the meetings that are taking place. And be in a position hopefully to bring it in front of town meeting in October.
Okay,
You really feel like they can get through their design in time for that?
Yeah, well, I think the wild card is Keolis and the MBTA. Because you're relying on them. So I think that Ty and Bond and Karis and her staff would commit to getting it done by them, but you're relying on third parties who ultimately are kind of the decision makers here in some respects as far as what they're gonna require us to do. And you know, getting them to go on our time frame is what's been the problem all the way through. Now, there's hopefully this, with the meeting last week, as I understand, it, some momentum was created that will prompt to have another meeting. They're trying to get that scheduled within the next 2 weeks to try to push it along, but the problem remains as it was before, is that some of it's out of our control because of those agencies involved.
Yeah. Do we know how many other towns like Needham are petitioning those agencies for quiet zone?
Yeah, it will sound like others are, some are.
There are some, I think we're the furthest ahead of the non-pre-rule quiet, so there's communities that have quiet zones that are kind of upgrading their quiet zones, that they had them. Historically, of the ones that are participating or interested in adopting them, I think we're the furthest along, and to be frank, I think the most willing to foot the cost of moving forward with the quiet zone. I think the cost has been a limiting factor in some of the other communities that have gotten to the design phase.
Yeah, and the cost here is gonna be a consideration as well, because we already know it's gonna be more than the $3.5 million that it's projected. And again, that's leaving the golf course out of it entirely.
Yeah.
So, so the latest estimate is that that cost could rise to between $4 to $5 million for the intersections from West Street through Oak Street.
Yeah.
so that's excluding Great Plain Ave.
No, it's
Or
not. It's what I think they're calling short-term work at Great Plain Ave.
Okay,
So I understand it to be the terminology, but it would include great work at Great Plain.
okay. Thank you for that update. Appropriate for sewer enterprise fund cash capital. And that is to fund, $195,000 to replace the Cook Bridge pump station.
Yeah, it's the design. For the pump station replacement, the design should take a year, and would anticipate that the funding request for the actual work, which is currently estimated to cost $3,859,000, will come before town meeting in May of 26. And we do anticipate that will be primarily from sewer borrow.
It ultimately is paid by the users.
But that's part of our 10% debt though.
It is part of our 10%.
Yeah.
Correct. And generally, utility debt, the combined water and sewer contributes about 1.5 to the peak years of 2% in terms of the total debt load.
1.5 of the 10, is that what you're saying? 1.5.
1.5% in terms of additive.
Oh.
So we got 3% within the
Yeah.
levy limit. The combination of sewer and water, the low years, which we've been going through a number of low years, it's been 1% in where people against some high years, and it's gonna be about 2% more. Or in other words, 5% of the 10% will be within the levy limit and water and sewer, yeah.
Okay. And this is going to be funded by,
This is a former financial warrant article with the residual, which there's $161,615, and then the balance is from retained earnings, 33,000.
what was that left over from?
It was a sewer lateral project.
Okay.
I forgot to look up the specific name, but I can tell you that next week.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we want to vote on this?
I would make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of the article with the title appropriate for water enterprise fund cash capital.
Sewer.
I'm sorry, I was on sewer.
We weren't talking about sewer.
I'm sorry, sewer, I apologize.
No problem.
I was in the wrong place.
Second. Okay, a roll call vote, Barry,
Yes, yes.
Lydia, thank you. Tina,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ally,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, water enterprise cash capital. And
Madam Chair, the water, cash capital is consistent of, 3, items. The first is, upgrades to the Charles River Water Treatment Plant, going here around that. HVAC upgrades for $405,000. A request, with, water distribution improvement master plan, study for $250,000. The continual water distribution system improvements, designs for the next phase. Which is, the areas of Mills Road and Sachem Road, area, of Needham. And then, core fleet, water fleet of 3 vehicles, for $273,485. One of the 3 vehicles is proposed to be electric. And it's a small vehicle, 150, so, we know that those exist and, they're proven to be reliable.
okay. Questions? Does anybody want to,
I'll make a motion that the finance committee recommend adoption of the article entitled appropriate for water enterprise fund cash capital. In the amount of $977,985 to be spent from the water enterprise fund retained earnings.
second? Great. Barry,
Yes.
Lydia,
Yes.
Tina,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Ally. Yes. And the chair votes yes. Great. And rescind debt authorizations.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there are 2 projects that are complete. The budgets have been released and there remains some unborrowed capacity that can be rescinded. The first is the Public Works Storage Facility, the one that we just discussed earlier this evening, with a residual balance of $35,000 that can be rescinded. And then the Public Safety Building Construction Project. This was the supplemental appropriation from debt for the public safety building where there was uncertainty relative to contaminants that may or may not have been found. And the impact of COVID in terms of that additional cost. Contaminants weren't, we did not encounter the same level of contaminants at the downtown area, the police station. And we did get some reimbursements for the COVID related increased cost. So almost the full authorization, 1,324,900 can be released.
I apologize, Dave. I kind of cut out. Could you just go through that last one again for me?
The public safety building construction, that was the last appropriation to the project. It was a supplemental appropriation.
Right.
That was the concerns about contaminated soils that were found at the site, as well as increased costs being generated from COVID because of the conditions the contractor had to satisfy in order to keep the work site going. Contaminants did not continue, we didn't have additional contaminant problems, and most all the COVID related expenses we were able to get covered through reimbursements from the federal government. So almost none of the appropriation was actually needed.
Great, thanks. And there's no savings here. I mean, whether it's savings, we just said authorized debt to that. So it just reduces our future debt obligations.
Well, there's savings in the fact that we
Right.
didn't spend it in the first place, and that's the first, and second is it reduces the amount of debt, it increases our debt capacity because we'll
Right.
remove consideration.
But unlike a warrant, other warrant article, where we've authorized certain funds that we can use for future warrant articles if they're not used. This can't be, I mean, it frees up that capacity, I guess is the answer. It doesn't provide cash for any other. You couldn't put it towards the project that we were just talking about, for example.
Well,
Well, we'd have the debt capacity to do so, but not actual cash.
correct. If we're not borrowing the $1.3 million, and there's a potential that the quiet zone might be in $1 million or so more. Well, it makes the quiet zone a little more feasible.
Until something else comes up.
Always moving.
Any further questions, or does anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that the finance committee adopt the article entitled rescind debt authorization in the amount of $1,359,900.
I'll second.
Great. Let's just take a vote. Ally?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Lydia?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. Finally. Can we take a vote on the climate action program initiative? Or do we have further questions for?
My only comment was that I was surprised that the other communities that are doing things like this were in much lower amounts and they seemed a little bit more specific than ours.
Yeah. I'm really wrestling with this one, and I'm not quite sure to do it justice to. I know we have a young person here, I'm sure she's gonna, it does justice to, start a discussion on it at 9:35.
That's fine, we can,
Because I read through all the materials, and there's a bunch of stuff here that just don't add up to me. And I'd like to walk people through that and just have a discussion about it. And so I'm not sure. Right,
No, that's
if we have time in our meeting next week to do so, my preference would be to do it that way.
that's fine. Do we want Gabby to come back in? Do you think that would be
She's more than
helpful?
welcome, obviously,
That would
but
be
I just.
helpful. Oh, she's yeah. I did not see her. I think that's a good idea.
Let's do it first thing, and I mean, I just, I think there's a lot here, and I just want to make sure I understand it all, and that we all understand it all before we take.
And it's
action.
different. I mean, we've not done this before, so.
So that would be my request.
Okay. And then,
Madam Chair, one other procedural action committee needs to take. There are a number of articles, including action article that the committee has yet to take a position. Warrants going to publication tomorrow, so can the committee take a vote to have articles that you haven't taken a position on yet to read recommendation at town meeting? And just to quickly summarize what those articles are, is Article 4 and 5, those are the collective bargaining articles. Article 10, climate action. Article 11, which is the financial application. Articles 20 through 26, which are the CPA related articles. And Article 46, the leaf blowers, which we're expecting that no action will be taken on it, but it still has to
oh, I'm
appear.
sorry, I thought that was no, I thought that had pulled that, no.
You're talking about the plastics ones?
No, I'm talking about the leaf blower.
Yeah, I thought that they.
The select board can't remove it from the warrant. They have to talk to the moderator about what happens at town meetings. Because they got signatures to put it in the warrant, it has to stay in the warrant.
Okay,
They told us they're not pursuing it, so
okay,
they're in touch with, they will be in touch with the moderator.
thank you. So. Can somebody make a motion on Dave's? We need to.
Just recommendation. Or if you just authorize us to do that, we'll sure that's what. it's-
I
Yeah.
would make a motion that the finance committee authorize the warrant committee to put in the town meeting warrant, the final town meeting warrant, that the articles we haven't taken action on. Our recommendations will be made at town meeting.
I'll second that.
Ally,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Tina,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Lydia,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, thank you. And we were gonna have a discussion of the capital plan. But,
Oh, I wasn't sure what that was.
well, I thought you were getting, you're putting together the financing plan for us.
Oh, for dividend and stuff.
That's-
We're looking at either something of mine on that. Oh, we had agreed it was gonna be in April.
Okay, sorry. So, do we have room next week to do that? I mean, will you be prepared to have that conversation? Start that next week?
Um,
No,
let me.
let me know,
confirm
well,
with you.
Dave will get back to you on that.
Yes.
because I think it's gonna take more than just one.
Oh, I
meeting.
anticipate that is true.
Okay,
Yes.
I was trying to avoid maybe, school vacation week, having a meeting if possible, but I'll be out of town. Okay,
I'm gonna be out that week too.
okay,
I'm not calling.
that's fine. And is anybody else gonna be out?
I'm away.
So. We have to plan to not have a meeting in school vacation week, because I don't think Karen's coming. I mean,
And again, right, this is looking more at all the things, not in just this town meeting, but future, because what is in the warrant all works within all the policies and parameters. What the longer term discussion is, what's the impact of the major projects such as the Pollen Middle School?
exactly, it's the major projects. And how are we financing that? And what does our debt
Levels of.
levels look like? Yeah.
Yeah.
We wanna
We
have.
just have
that-
Louise, we could have Louise update our model.
So, any other updates? At all?
No,
Great.
I will make a motion to return.
Second.
Gary,
Yes.
Lydia,
Yes.
Tina,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ally, and the
Yes.
chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Sorry it was so long.
So next week
Tina,
is-
sorry to your daughter. Sorry.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
So are we meeting the 9th as well? Is that the plan?
That
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
That has the